September 30th, 2026. That's the date Tennessee has set to execute Christa Gail Pike. If it happens, she'll be the first woman executed in the state in more than 200 years. And here's the part that messes with your head right away. When the crime happened, Christa was only 18. Not 40. Not some hardened lifer. 18. So tonight, I want to do two things at once, because this case forces you to. First, walk through what actually happened to Colleen Slemmer, the young woman who never got to grow up. Second, look at the psychology that makes this story feel like a trapdoor. The kind of story you can't stop listening to, even when you want to. Because the scariest thing about this case isn't evil. It's how fast a normal setting, school, friends, a campus, a walk at night, turns into something irreversible. And how people convince themselves it's justified. This is the case often referred to as the murder of Colleen Slemmer. And it begins in a place that's supposed to be a reset. A second chance. Christa Gail Pike was born in March of 1976, in Beckley, West Virginia. By the time she was old enough to understand what home was supposed to feel like, stability wasn't part of the deal. Accounts of her childhood describe a deeply chaotic environment, substance abuse, neglect, and a kid who learned early that adults weren't reliable. When a child grows up like that, their brain adapts. Not in a cute, inspirational way. In a survival way. You learn to skin people fast. You learn to attach hard when someone gives you attention. And you learn that being rejected feels like danger, not disappointment. By her early teens, Christa was using substances heavily. School didn't hold. Home didn't hold. Even family members who tried to help couldn't keep her anchored. Eventually, she ended up in Job Corps. If you don't know Job Corps, think of it like a structured residential training program, meant to get young people out of unstable environments and into work skills. A controlled space. Rules, schedules, dorms, classes. For some people, it's the first time life has guardrails. For others, it's just a new stage. New people. New drama. New power games. In 1995, Christa arrives at the Knoxville Job Corps Center. She's 18. And she's about to latch onto the first thing that feels like loyalty. A teenage boy named Tadderell Shipp. Tadderell was 17. He and Christa clicked fast. Not a slow, careful relationship. More like a bond that forms when two people recognize the same kind of chaos in each other. Their relationship became intense. Possessive. All in. And in an environment like Job Corps, where everyone is close, everyone's watching, and social status is oxygen, an intense couple becomes a unit. A little kingdom. It's also around this time that Christa and Tadderell lean into an identity, the occult. Now, here's something important. A lot of teens get into edgy symbolism. That doesn't make them violent. But in this case, the occult label becomes a tool. It becomes a story people tell themselves. A way to make impulses feel like destiny. A way to turn jealousy into mission. Because once you believe you're acting for something bigger than you, once you frame it as sacrifice, loyalty, devotion, your conscience gets quieter. And your excitement gets louder. And then there's Colleen Slemmer. Colleen was 17. She had arrived at Job Corps a few months earlier, also in the computer program. She was trying to get her footing. Her mother, like many parents, hoped the program would help her daughter build a future. Colleen became friends with Tadderell. And that, whether it was real closeness or just normal friendliness, was enough to trigger something in Christa. Here's the psychology. Jealousy isn't always, I want what you have. Sometimes it's, if you can take it, I never had it. For someone who grew up with instability, attachment can feel like a lifeline. So the threat isn't losing a boyfriend. The threat is losing the one stable thing your nervous system is clinging to. And when someone's emotional wiring turns abandonment into danger, they don't respond like, I'm sad. They respond like, I have to stop this. Christa became convinced Colleen was trying to take Tadderell. People around them said Colleen wasn't trying to steal anyone. But logic doesn't matter when your story is already written. Because if you accept the truth, this is in my head, then you also have to face the pain underneath it. And pain is harder than rage. So rage becomes the solution. According to later accounts, Christa told at least one friend she intended to kill Colleen. And then she reframed it. Not as murder. As sacrifice. As something extreme that had to happen. That's not just a detail. That's the mechanism. When someone turns violence into a narrative, they stop seeing a person. They start seeing a role. A threat. An enemy. A necessary loss. And when you strip someone of personhood in your mind, you can do anything to them. On the night of January 12, 1995, the plan moved from fantasy to action. Christa wasn't alone. She had help. Another student, Shadola Peterson, was pulled in as part of the group. And Tadaro was there. This matters. Because group violence is different from solo violence. In groups, responsibility diffuses. Everyone tells themselves, I'm not the one doing it. I'm just here. I didn't start it. I didn't mean for it to go that far. And that's how I wouldn't do this becomes I did this. The plan was simple on the surface. Lure Colleen out under the pretense of peace. Offer weed as a gesture. Make it feel casual. Safe. A reset. Colleen agreed to go with them. That's another thing that messes with people later. Because the last step she took looked voluntary. No screaming. No obvious fight in the beginning. Just a young woman thinking, maybe this drama is finally over. They walked away from campus toward a more secluded area near the University of Tennessee. And then the tone changed. Fast. What happened next is documented in court records and later testimony, and I'm going to be careful with details here, because the point isn't shock. The point is what the violence reveals. Colleen was attacked and held. She fought back. The evidence showed defensive injuries, meaning she tried to protect herself, tried to survive, tried to get away. This wasn't a single moment. This wasn't an instant. It was prolonged, deliberate. And somewhere during the attack, a symbol, a pentagram, was cut into Colleen's body. That detail is easy to sensationalize. But psychologically, it's about ownership. It's about branding. It's about turning a human being into a message. I did this. This was mine. This meant something. That's why people who hear this case don't forget it. Because it's not just violence. It's violence with performance. And performance is what makes it feel cold. In the end, Colleen was killed. Her life stopped there, in the dark, while people she knew stood over her. And the world kept turning. Which is always the most disturbing part. That after something like that, the night continues. Afterward, Christa's behavior became its own kind of evidence. According to accounts, she returned to the Job Corps Center and told another student what she had done. Not with panic. Not with shame. But with a kind of pride, like she wanted the story to land. And there was an even darker detail. She kept a fragment of Colleen as a souvenir. If you're wondering how that's possible, how someone does something like that, the answer isn't monster. The answer is dissociation plus obsession. When a person is emotionally detached from the reality of death, but deeply attached to the thrill of control, they collect proof. Because proof means it was real. Proof means it happened. Proof means you can relive it. That's also why some killers return to scenes. Or keep trophies. It's not only about hiding. It's about replaying. And in a twisted way, it's about feeling powerful. Because a person who feels powerless inside will chase power outside. Even if the cost is someone else's life. The next morning, Colleen's body was discovered. The investigation moved quickly. Evidence connected back to the group. And within days, arrests were made. Christa Pike was arrested alongside Tatterall Shipp and Shadola Peterson. Christa gave a detailed confession. Then later she shifted. And this is another psychological pattern you'll see in violent offenders. First comes control through confession. I'll tell you what happened. It feels like power. It feels like steering the narrative. Then comes control through revision. I didn't mean it. It got out of hand. I blacked out. I heard voices. I'm not the person you think I am. Sometimes those claims are real. Sometimes they're strategies. Often it's a mix of both, because memory, shame, fear, and self-protection all collide. But the court process didn't hinge on vibes. It hinged on evidence. In 1996, a jury convicted Christa Pike of first-degree murder and conspiracy. She was sentenced to death. Tattership. Because he was 17 at the time, received a life sentence rather than the death penalty. Shadola Peterson ultimately received a much lighter sentence. And that, right there, is one of the reasons this case stays in people's minds. Because it hits a deep fairness nerve. One person gets death. Another gets life. Another gets probation. And you can feel your brain trying to balance the scale. Your brain hates imbalance. It keeps searching for the missing piece that makes it make sense. That's a cognitive hook. That's why people stay. Because your mind is trying to solve a moral equation that doesn't have clean math. Christa's time in prison didn't calm the story down. In the years that followed, she was involved in serious disciplinary incidents, including a violent attack on another inmate. That matters because it shapes how the public sees her now. Not as someone who changed, but as someone who remained dangerous. At the same time, Christa has made statements over the years that frame her situation as unfair, saying she did something terrible, but doesn't deserve to die for what 3 people did. And that framing is powerful, because it's built to pull you into a debate. Is the death penalty justice? Is it revenge? Is it consistent? Is it moral? And here's what's true. You can hold empathy for complexity, and still hold accountability for the harm. Those are not opposites. But online, people treat them like opposites. Which is why this case keeps catching fire whenever a new execution date gets set. Now we're back to 2026. In late 2025, the Tennessee Supreme Court issued an execution order for Christa Pike, setting the date for September 30th, 2026. Tennessee executions take place at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville. And because her crime occurred before January 1, 1999, state law allows her to choose between lethal injection, the default, or electrocution. That detail matters because it makes the case feel like a time capsule. Electrocution sounds like a different era. A harsher era. A more visibly violent era. And it forces people to picture it. Which spikes emotion. And emotion spikes attention. That's not a moral statement. That's just cognition. We pay attention to things that feel vivid and final. An execution is the most final thing a government can do. There's another historic layer here, too. If Christa Pike is executed, she would be the first woman executed in Tennessee since the early 1800s. That kind of milestone turns a case into a headline again. It turns it into a symbol. Not just of a murder, but of a system. And systems are what people argue about for years. So what makes this story so sticky? Why do people get trapped in it? Because it hits 5 psychological triggers at once. 1. The age shock. 18 years old. A teen. The brain says, how does that happen? 2. The betrayal shock. This wasn't a stranger in an alley. It was peers. People she knew. 3. The group dynamic. A crime that shouldn't happen alone, but did happen together, so your mind keeps asking who led, who followed, who could have stopped it. 4. The identity mask. The occult framing, the sacrifice, language, your brain tries to decode whether it was belief, performance, or excuse. 5. The moral trap at the end. Execution forces a binary conversation, deserves to die or doesn't. when real life is usually messier than that. And in the middle of all those hooks is Colleen, the person too many retellings treat like a plot point. So I want to end with this, because it matters. Colleen Slemmer was 17. She had a mother who thought Job Corps could help her build a future. She had a life that was still in its early draft. And she was pulled into a situation she didn't fully understand until it was too late. When people talk about this case, it's easy to get stuck on Christa. On the drama. On the shock. On the execution date. But the center of the story is the person who didn't get another morning. And whatever you believe about punishment, whatever you believe about redemption, the truth is simple. Colleen didn't get to grow up. And everyone else, for decades, has kept living inside the fallout. As September 30th, 2026 approaches, the arguments will get louder. The headlines will resurface. People will pick sides. But the facts will stay the same. A young woman was killed. A system decided what to do about it. And a date was placed on a calendar. A date that, if it holds, will close one chapter. And reopen the questions that never really go away.
If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so YouTube lets you know when we upload a new video. And leave a comment. What case or story do you want us to cover next?